all feel super familiar with each other now, but hopefully by the end of the day we'll all be a lot more friendly. So, just a quick note by the way, apologies that the programmes have ended up being super tiny. We're not working in collaboration with Specsavers, but yeah, we did want them to be bigger size, but here you are. Not everything can be perfect, sets the precedent the rest of the day. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you over to our panel of some of our young advisors. And what's going to be happening here is just a chance for you to, well, they're just going to be discussing topics that they feel really relevant to young people who access services and kind of get us thinking about why we need participation and why it's actually an important thing for us all to be talking about. And I know from my experience of working with them as a participation lead and seeing all of the great work that they've been doing around the Midlands and beyond, it's easy to see why services are in need of actually participation groups listening to people who are accessing services. And unfortunately, it's not always a great experience for people across the board. Participation isn't always very kind of actively encouraged, or people don't know how to do it. So hopefully what we can all take away from the day is how you can begin to start implementing that. How, if you're a young person or a parent or a carer involved with mental health services in some way, how can you get involved with your service? What's the kind of change that you can help bring about? So without further ado, I'm going to pass you on to Sam, Harry, Bri and Tim. Yeah, take it away guys.
Does this work? Yes. Hello. I'm not going to sing for you all, don't worry. So, we decided, like, as what was mentioned, we've spoken at a lot of other conferences. Louder. Is this better? Okay. Yeah, we've spoken at a lot of other conferences, and we kind of got together and decided that we wanted to do our own because we had a lot to say. And then when we was asked to put on a panel, we all of a sudden forgot everything and didn't know what we wanted to talk about. But we came up with like a few key points, and it all kind of fit into this term, surviving mental health services. And it sounds very dramatic, but it's like that way for a reason. It's mainly talking about the long-lasting effect of just being in a service, despite how long you've been in it, what your experience was if it was good or bad. There's certain things that is like almost unavoidable once you come out of mental health services. So we're talking about how to take control of your own care, being reliant on services, having to have conversations in your schools, in your colleges, in your universities about your experiences in order to make sure you're getting the right support. And we're also talking about how to have conversations with your family and friends about what you're going through or what you have been through, and almost that reintroduction that you have to do with your family and friends in order to know who I was when I first started my struggles is now not who I am, and I'm not a person with a massive mental health label written across my forehead. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about is taking control of your own care. And apart from this job, I'm also a peer support worker for CAMS in Grimsby, and I have a lot of conversations with young people who are terrified to say to their therapist they're just not going in the right direction, because the last thing that they want to do is kind of make a fuss, and it's a really hard thing to have that confidence, I guess, to say when things are going well or when things aren't going well. And it's also things about making sure that you're in the right service, and it's really difficult when you're struggling to not feel that you just want someone else to take the reins off you for a bit and let them lead you, but that can work for so long, and then at some point you kind of have to take that control back and lead your own call, lead within the next few minutes. So I'm going to pass the mic around to you guys just to talk about how we kind of took control of our own care and services. Like I said, we was all in services for different amounts of time. We're all from different parts of the country, and we've all had different experiences. So who wants it? We all have anxiety, so this is like the worst situation for us to be in. This is like the most unfamiliar territory ever. Yeah. So thank you for that encouragement.
Hi, I'm Bri. So for me, taking control of my own care was, I was in a situation where I was working with a therapist who the relationship was clearly not what I needed. I needed someone who was very strong-willed and would sit down and go, no, you're going to tell me what's going on, we're going to work through this, like we don't do silence. Whereas the therapist I had at the time was just very suited to a different individual. I was too afraid to step up and say, this isn't working, I need a different personality to work with me, to gel with me. And in the end, because I was too afraid to say anything, I ended up in an inpatient unit. And then when I came out, I was like, no, okay, I'm going to take control of my own care. I'm going to say, I need a new therapist to work with. I need someone who is more suited to me. So I stepped forward, I explained what I wanted, and my therapist was fine with it, by the way, like, it was not a big deal. She ended up, we sat down, had a conversation about who I wanted, what I wanted, and she went back to her team, discussed with a few people, and found one person who would really, really suit me. Turned out to be an art therapist, which was even better for me. And then my road to recovery actually started to begin. So I found it nerve-wracking, very scary. Getting to know a new person can be very scary, because especially when you've put years of work in with one person, it can be hard to then start fresh. But I knew that I needed to do it, and it wasn't starting afresh because I had learned something and learned things from my own therapist. It was just that we weren't best suited for how far I needed to go. So, yeah.
Although I'm
Yep.
well, and similarly to Brian, I was in an inpatient unit a few years ago, back in 2012, and when I was discharged from there, I was on antidepressants. They weren't actually working. I was on fluoxetine 20 milligram, which at first was handed to me as some sort of magic solution. Like, here's an antidepressant that will fix you right up.
Did it?
Oh, of course it did. Well, for some people, antidepressants do work, but in my case, they did not. And the first step to taking control of my own care was simply just saying, no, that's not working for me, and just putting the foot down. And it's difficult to find confidence to do that. It took me weeks and weeks to actually say, yeah, this ain't working. And luckily I had the support of my family, and they recognised that actually, yeah, it wasn't working, it was making me, antidepressants are making me really worse. It was an antidepressant, it was a pro-depressant, it was making me worse. But I also did little things for myself throughout the days, like if I was going through a really tough day, even if I had achieved something even quite small, like, I don't know, going into town or going on a walk or something, what I'd do is and this is actually a suggestion from the school nurse at the time, and that was sort of to cook it. She said, Tim, cut yourself a bit of cake, both mentally and physically, reward yourself, treat yourself for getting through the day, like you've survived another day. So if you can survive that, you can survive many more days, and you'll get there. So as well as just saying no to things that don't work, it's little things each day which they can be quite hard to see, I know. But once you do one little thing, you can do more, and it gets better and better as time goes on. Eventually, I found that after antidepressants, that psychotherapy was the way forward. And I was doing that for a long time, but it was immensely beneficial. Yeah, absolutely, being in control, because young people deserve a say in the treatment they actually get. And interestingly, when I moved from CAMHS to IAPS, which is the Adult Mental Health Services, they were a lot better at actually giving me a say and giving me the options on the table. That in CAMHS was non-existent back in 2012. Absolutely, you should give people a say in what treatment they want. I mean, you can't just say it's rather arrogant if someone if they think they know what's best for someone even though they don't know them that well. And that's exactly what CAMHS' attitude was in 2012, at least in Leicestershire, where I was, still live. But yeah, at the end of the day, don't if something's not right, say no. Say no, this is not right, it's not working, and put it right, or at least try to. Because if you don't speak up, people will assume that you're very easy to push over. And you don't want to think that, because they'll keep doing it, and others will keep doing it, and the problem gets worse and it gets worse. So if you say no, you stand up for yourself, and people realise, oh, okay, well, maybe we should actually listen to this type of work. So yeah, I mean, as well as as well as just saying, no to things that don't work and saying yes to things that do work, do the little things each day to take control of your cat, even if it's just a small thing, it can go a really long way.
Yeah, inspiring stuff, as you can hear. It's going to be a really amazing day. So I was in a bit of a unique position with my diagnosis. When I was about 2-3 years old, I was diagnosed with ASD, which is autistic spectrum disorder. And also that kind of correlated with, as you can see, my physical disabilities, which made me, they like to say a kind of unique case. That's the nice way of putting it, which is usually your life's going to be incredibly difficult and we're trying to be nice about it. But yeah, and I think that made that difficult was that autism doesn't really fall under the sort of conventional understanding of something like mental illness, because it's not one. And they really like having that leeway, because the further you are away from a conventional kind of mental illness diagnosis, the easier it is to justify not helping you. So I was eloquent, and I did well academically, so people would often question, well, what's wrong with him? So I think that's a lot of what I needed initially. But me taking control of my own services was kind of went in the opposite direction that I think a lot of people did, because a lot of people who have autism go for a period in their youth where they try to, for lack of a better word, normalize themselves. They try to present as sort of like somebody who is outside of the permit of what is considered normal, doing their best normal person impression. I know that people who I live very close to, including my brother, went through that, and that is really not a positive way of trying to live your life, because you can't perform an inauthentic version of yourself. It will destroy you in the end. I went in the opposite direction, which was I was very low confidence, so I gave up on the premise of normality and even just socializing at all when I was about 6 or 7, and I completely and totally withdrew into myself. So I was not engaging with my services for like the opposite reason that most people do. I wasn't determined to be normal. I was just sort of determined to accept myself as like a freak and just give up on ever being able to sort of interact with mainstream society. But it was only after I was able to connect more closely to a lot of therapy that was related to speech and language. In fact, I still do a fair bit of speech and language therapy to this day, just to make sure I can be as eloquent as I am now. It really kind of helped me realize that there is still a window into the world, no matter what position you start off in. And I don't want to take much time on this topic because there are still so many other things we want to talk about, but I just want to say that if you are or are working with somebody who has autism or a diagnosis of mental illness, and they've sort of given up on the prospect of them ever having a kind of position within, I guess, the tribe of men, as the person who created the art project, Marwan Cole called it. Look up Marwan Cole, it's a very interesting project related to mental health and social isolation. It's not true. You can still reintegrate yourself into kind of mainstream society.
Okay, so we've heard about taking control of your own care, really inspirational stuff. So the next thing we want to discuss is being reliant on services. Some people, yes, are reliant, some people are not. Personally, for me, when I was in council late 2012, which is really now a long time ago, initially, yes, quite reliant on the service because it was like a lifeline. But when I saw its weaknesses, it's not a good thing to necessarily be reliant on a service, because if you rely on something and it's taken away, you end up falling apart. In fact, when, as I said earlier, when antidepressants were given to me, I became quite reliant on them, and that didn't turn out too well, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, not everyone needs to be in a service for a long amount of time. In fact, for me, in late 2012, my severe depression and anxiety at the time was being caused by academic pressure. And what I really needed was just a really long break away from school. not be shut in an inpatient unit, locked away and isolated from the rest of the world. Luckily I wasn't sectioned, thank goodness. But that wasn't nice anyway, being isolated. I mean, it got to the point where I was that badly isolated from the rest of the world that my friends actually thought I'd died. They thought I just was removed from the face of the earth somehow. That's how bad it was. So, reliance is a very tricky topic. Yes, some people need to be in services longer than others. It does vary on terms like that, so it really does. For a young person's safety, yes, they might need to be in there longer. Again, it entirely depends. But for someone like me, or someone very similar who was suffering from, had their severe depression caused by the education sector, which poorly understands mental health, I think, now still, which is rather worrying. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to lock people away in an inpatient unit. You just need to give them a break away from the problem. The problem for me was how I'm being treated in secondary school. And it's also being employed as well, which was fantastic. Eventually, of course, I got, as I became less and less reliant and did those sort of self-care things, I did get better, obviously. Reliance, it's a tricky topic, absolutely.
I had a lot of different experiences, obviously. For me, I went into CAMHS in 2012. Was it 2012? Yeah, 2012. It wasn't the first sort of service for mental health I've received. The first time was, I was 10 and in primary school, I was in year 5, and they did this like mental health day where they kind of did like this, let's get all the cute year 10s in and just ask them how things are going and how they're dealing with stress, and I was like, I'm a complete mess, help me. And they're like, Jesus. So I know that was my first sort of experience with actually talking about how I was feeling, because you're not really asked when you're so young, how are you coping with that? It's just kind of, come on kid, get in there, carry on. And then I was then sent to CAMHS in 2012 and was an inpatient in 2013 for 2 months. And then wasn't discharged till my literal 18th birthday in 2015, and I felt very reliant on services because in some ways my issues had started way before I was 10, but that was the first time someone had asked me, and then I had to wait another 3 years until I was actually in CAMHS. So it felt like all this work was just starting, even though I'd been in there for a number of years, because I think when you don't check in with people who are so young, they are just going to keep it inside, or it might present in other ways. It might present in anger, and they might become that one child in the class who disrupts everyone else, or the class clown because they're trying to mask everything else going on for them. So I can see how it's easy to fall into the trap of being reliant on services, because when someone finally asks you how you're actually coping with these things, it's like a Pandora box effect, like everything comes out. And on my 18th birthday, I was then starting my transition into adult services, which was a completely different experience, and it feels like quite a common note, like not just in my town, like nationwide, the attitude of CAMHS, which is caring and almost like do it at your own pace, is completely different in adult services. And it was that way for me. It was almost, I had 2 assessment appointments and then was discharged on the 3rd one, even though they'd already agreed with CAMHS to go on for longer. And I was told in that 3rd session that I'd never had a mental health problem. It was all part of growing up. CAMHS had filled your head with ideas of things that you don't have wrong with you. And I'd been in services for 3.5 years at that point. So this, what I thought was progress, was completely undone in a half-an-hour session, and I wasn't able to be reliant on those services anymore because they were kind of taken away from me very quickly, and not only me but my family as well. So my parents felt like we'd got to such a strong point and things are looking up now, and it was, oh actually, yeah, we take back those 3.5 years, good luck, kind of. So it was one of the toughest periods for me to go through, just confusing, not knowing who I am, not knowing anything, what made sense. Nothing really made sense to me at that point. And I then went to a self-referral adult services called Open Minds, which is basic talking therapy, CBT therapy. I say basic in the sense that it's not like intensive treatment, there's no inpatient units, nothing like that. And anyone can do it. Adults go for a list of reasons, whether you're struggling with breakups, whether you're struggling with work stress, whether you're struggling with alcohol or drug misuse. So I didn't feel like it was such an intense thing, and it then felt easier to do that treatment and then leave because it wasn't something that I wanted to be reliant on. What also helped me was that we're talking about the theme of participation today as well. I was immediately, as soon as I left CAMHS when I was 18, was invited back to be part of the patient participation group to give my feedback on how I thought the service was. And with that then turned into a job for peer support, and I'm still a peer support worker today. So, in a way, I haven't ever really loved CAMHS, and they can't get rid of me, even if they tried. So, being reliant on the services, I'm the guy for that, but I think, in a way, that kind of kick out of the door from adult services was the thing that allowed me to not be reliant on anyone anymore, because just because you've had such a good experience in one place, it's the same with bad experiences. That's not how things are always going to be, and you can't really expect that. So, as Tim said, when you don't have the choice to be reliant anymore, it's like survival mode. So, I got through that by figuring out what my priorities were there and then, and I thought if anything else happens then I'll get support. And I've done that recently. I've just accessed more support about another incident that happened recently for me. But it wasn't a case of I need to go over everything that's happened in my entire life. It was no, I actually just need some support getting through this right now. And that's kind of how I'm dealing with being reliant.
So I think it's very easy to become reliant on services, especially like CAMHS and youth mental health services, because not only are you developing as a person and accessing the support, you're also going through a struggle. So for me, I was in young people mental health services for 6 years over my adolescence, and that meant that not only when I was struggling with my mental health would I talk to somebody, when I was just struggling with general life, I would talk to my therapist or whoever rather than my support network at home. So it's very easy to become reliant, not only because of your mental health struggles, but also just with daily life things. So if I had a friendship fallout, I'd talk to my therapist because she understood it. Like, it was a lot easier to talk to her than it was to talk to my family or whatever. And I kind of just got into that routine. So I can see how it is really easy to become reliant on services in that sense. And also, I think inpatient services are one of the worst services for becoming reliant, because you kind of get stuck in this little bubble, you're away from the rest of the world, and that's how life is, and transitioning from something where you have every second of your life controlled to having freedom again is very scary, and also very scary for friends, family, parents, because you've become reliant on this service and now you are not. But I think the key thing for reliance on services is making sure that you know you're going into this service to get help. Yes, the key aim is recovery, but the key aim is also to not ever need services. You don't want to, if you need it, you can go back to services, but the main aim is to get out of services. So as long as you keep that in mind the entire way, that this is a journey for your own mental health, but also you don't have to be going to, a therapist every 2-3 weeks or whatever. The whole aim is to be able to earn money.
I'm just aware that we've been given a 5-minute away from our glamorous assistant over there. So this is a panel that we're carrying on later, just before the closing address. So there's a coffee break. I believe the therapy dogs are before that, so I'm sure you'll all be very excited to be pulled away from them. To come on towards talks and more. But we have double the time later, so we still want to talk about accessing support in school, college, and universities, as well as how to have that conversation with your family and friends. And we'll also be taking questions. And I believe there's question cards on everyone's table. Yeah, those. So, are we handing them in one place? Are we just leaving them on the table? Yeah. Oh, brought down there. Was there someone dancing? Yeah, that is the question dancer we've hired for today. But yeah, so we will be around as well for the rest of the day. I know we've all got different talks. We're going on to, we're in the pods that are upstairs. I am one of those private appointments on your sheet, and which is just me in a room. So if anyone wants to talk about anything that's mentioned on this panel or more about what we do as young advisors, then I'll be around. But yeah, thank you all for being here today. This is huge. We thought it was like a birthday party when we went in. So yeah, not saying that from any traumatic experiences, obviously. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for